No mai, haere mai ki Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Welcome to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod, brought to you by Ashley and Martin Medical Hair Centres. It's the big week, All Blacks v Boks, the greatest rivalry. We'll look into the last 4 games and examine why the Boks have won them all, as well as break down this year's trends to figure out whether they can break the Eden Park streak this weekend. We had a chat with Geordie Barrett before the Rugby Championship kicked off, so we'll play you that, including his insights into playing against Damien Dialende, who he thinks sets the bar for 12s worldwide. The Black Ferns recovered from a scratchy start to expose Japan out wide, so we'll look at how their World Cup campaign is developing before their crucial showdown against Ireland. We'll also have a look at how good the Bunnings Rugby Assist program is for developing women's rugby at the grassroots. And the Shield is on the move again. Southland take advantage of Waikato's Shield hangover, but it could move again when they host Canterbury this weekend. We have another Rugby Ready giveaway for a month of free training with All Blacks guru Nick Gill's training team. We also have your emails and comments, as well as all the in-depth analysis you've come to expect from James Parsons. And once again, the Oracle, Bryn Hall. He picks it, Southland.
I did not, to be honest, when I saw the name sheet come out with all the All Blacks coming back, I was a little bit thinking like, oh, this is probably the wrong decision, but I think we just touched on air with Jip that those kind of conditions had Southland written all over it. So, yeah, it was great to see Southland obviously get the Shield, and obviously would have had a big night last night on the airplane getting back home to Southland.
Huge steel balls over here. He's got it all the time, isn't he?
Oh, mate, it was seriously cold.
Yeah.
And I remember as I'd done the FPC game, and as I was walking the tunnel, I bumped into Jack Taylor on the way out, mate. He just had a grin from ear to ear before the game, looked at the conditions, and you just, I don't know, they came as men possessed, but they enjoyed doing it, you know, like it was a great atmosphere, and although it was disappointing for Waikato, it's good when the Shield moves around. It just creates so much exciting narrative as a fan, I think.
Yeah, and it affects the way the NPC plays out as well, right? Like suddenly your impetus is completely in a different place.
Yeah, and it's just that mindset, like, you know, you want to keep the Shield, but how do you rotate your squad towards the finals and stuff? I don't know, it gives so much reason to talk footy, which I like.
Like all the time, we'll talk more Ravelry Shield, more NPC towards the end of the program. But let's start with the Ashley and Martin turning point this week. And the turning point this week is going to be a forward-looking one. What needs to be the turning point if the All Blacks are going to stop this 4-match losing streak against the Springboks?
Look, I think the turning point is, we touched on it last week, the aerial game. It's been a part of the All Blacks that they've wanted to try and improve, and they've openly talked about that in the media of how they can try and rectify not only the South Africans, but throughout the first part of the Stream series. And it's a pretty big stat that we got here. So, like, 127 kicks South Africa have had, 46 have been regained through those 127 kicks, which is a rate at 37%. Of that, 25 players are regaining that. So, you know, if it's a 15, a Fussy or a Colby, if they're kicking and chasing, they're regaining within that 37%. If you look on the other side with the All Blacks, when we are kicking, we've only regained 12 and 10% have been regained. So, like, I think firstly, the first part of that is how can we try and nullify that and stop the contestable game of your Grant Williams and your Pollard. That'll be a big talking point around, I guess, the preview of the South African team. But then also, Jip touched on it last week, is how can we try and put pressure on the South Africans with our own kicking game? Because if you look at those numbers, they're 10% regained off 126 kicks. And yes, some of them are long, but when we have gone to that contestable game, we haven't been able to get it back. So does that depend on who we want to be able to go for the ball? You know, does a Caleb Clark, a Lester Whanganuku, who has just come in, do they want to be able to have an aerial winger that can do that, along with Will Jordan at fullback, on the wing, possibly Ruben Love at fullback? Not too sure. So I think those questions probably do have to ask in and around how we can try and be better in that contestable space, along with also the nines nailing the kick, which is probably the most important part as well.
How much of it is selection and how much of it is approach, Chip? Like when you mentioned Caleb Clark is out, you know, he's not going to be in this game. When the All Blacks are making their selection for this game, are they thinking about the things that have gone wrong or the things that could go right?
I think they'll probably look at, okay, when the Wallabies won, what did they do well in terms, because it's not all on the them changing their style into a contestable kick to match South Africa, but I think you've got to understand that potentially going to be wet on Saturday night, there is going to be a lot of kicking, so you've got to pick the people that are going to play the best and be able to exploit the weaknesses that South Africa showed against the Wallabies. And those weren't always contestable kicks. You know, O'Connor found some nice 50-22s, little tops kicks, Nick White, grubbers in behind. So those are all options to be regained as well. And then I think through the hands, still in the rugby DNA of New Zealand is, you know, I think 1 line break in the last game, 2 previous. You know, even though if it's wet, can we chance our Sam? Or just get that balance between risk and reward. Because I think if you look at last year's stats, much higher line breaks, much higher offloads, much more defenders beaten and opportunities created, but less finished. And I think we've become very clinical at finishing when we get into the 22, but maybe haven't chanced our arm as much outside of the 22. So is there an element of keeping the ball in hand, and can they expose? Because that rush D did get exposed a lot from the Wallabies just by giving those bridge passes. So I think for the All Blacks, definitely you've got to know what the conditions are, and you've got to be able to match the aerial game. 1, stopping South Africa, and 2, regaining your own ball. But then don't go too far away from what, you know, it's 1 bad result, but the rest, there's been parts of their game. You know, if you look at that second test against France in Wellington, a lot of ball was kept in hands, and it created a lot of excitement.
Also in our attack as well, I think we know that line speed pressure is going to become. Look, they've been operating at 82% against the Australians, which isn't as a high click of what you'd probably see with the All Blacks and even the Argentinians being at high 80s or 90s. But I think it's the layered attack is going to be really important if we can get that right, because I think we are going to feel that. So we're going to know that's going to be coming. And I remember last year in the England series, the very first test match, that we knew that high line speed was coming, and probably took us a test match to try and feel it. I think, you know, you can manufacture it at training, but I think feeling that pressure, you'll see that in the first test, and we've got obviously 2 opportunities to do that. But I think the phase play shape on the edge, being on the same page, having a layered attack, a short ball out the back, but then also that bridge pass, little kicks in behind, or crossfield kicks or bridge passes. I think being able to take those opportunities when it does come, because I think we might get 3 or 4, and if we can nail, you know, 2 or 4 of those and score points off that, then it really gets the South Africans thinking about, do we want to be able to bring out that line pressure because we operate at a high click? And
that can be the difference, because if you look at when South Africa win, they tackle at 85%. When they lose, they tackle at 82%. And I know it's only 3% different, but in test match level footy, you only get a few opportunities, and you've got to be able to take them, which the Wallabies did so well in that first test. So those will be the fine margins that will potentially decide. And it's, you know, if it is to be on the weather report and be wet, and, you know, like, you're going to have some courage to play that style of footy.
The Springboks have shown an ability to attack as well and be quite open in their play.
Now, great stuff, Ross. I really enjoyed that question, because we've got some stats here that actually show what I think we're going to get out of the Springboks. And it's going to be a pretty conservative game plan, I think, and just based on Bryn's stats there and their ability to just retain ball through contestals. But when you look at their season so far, compared to all the other tests against the All Blacks previously, the 4 tests in terms of averages, and this year, when they've won, this just makes no sense to me how the numbers are like this, but it's a pretty telling story. When they've won, they've had 5.5 line breaks on average. When they've lost, they've had 14 line breaks. So when they've lost, out of those 14 line breaks, they've only scored 1.5 points in the 20 when entering the 22. With the 5.5 line breaks, they've scored 4. So when they're a little bit more conservative in nature, it actually leads to more victories for them. And I think, you know, we sort of saw an adjustment after that loss against the Wallabies to go more like that. But in terms of their gain line stats, when they've lost, the gain line they had was 78%, and when they've won, 64%. So that it doesn't. I know it doesn't make sense. Like, when I was reading them, I was like, man, there's a story to tell there, that sometimes when they expose, and I think it was a great example of when they got out to that 17-point lead or 22-point lead, whatever it was, against the Wallabies, it was just fast ball. They were playing on top, but it did increase the errors and the turnovers. And from those turnovers late in the game, we saw Tom Wright's try. So, and if you look at those numbers, why would you not go to a contestable kick all day? So I think the numbers suggest that I don't think we're going to get a South African side that's going to chance their arm in attack.
But when an opportunity opens up, it's a South African side that can kill you.
Well, That's the thing, but so like the fact that they've probably gone through, you know, Tony Brown's been there for like, what are we now in the second year? So I think they probably feel a little bit more confident if they do want to chance around and play with the ball in hand. So let's say if they get down by 14 points, right, for an example, and they can't go to that contestable kick so much. They have played a lot of rugby within the last 12, 24 months that they have tried to use that attack. So, but I agree with Jip. I think with what Rusty Erasmus said, the last test match that they lost, they talked around, we only kicked 6 times in the second half. So you can kind of see that their DNA, when it gets to the ability to want to be really tight, it's going to be wet, probably wet conditions at Eden Park. Pollard was big in and around with the selection around his kicking game and being able to put them in the right areas. So I agree with Chip. I think they're going to go into a bit more of a conservative style. But if the picture is there and there's an opportunity for them to play, whether they're down by 14 or 15 points whatsoever, or they feel like they want a chance around, they have shown in the last 12 to 24 months that they can have the ability to play.
And I think the other area that's interesting is the breakdown. So turnovers at the breakdown. When South Africa won, they've got 5. When they've lost, they've got 3. Again, a small margin, but it sort of shows that the importance of actually slowing ball down and turning it over. And for the All Blacks, they're exactly the same. When they've won or lost, they've averaged 6. So you can see that they're actually getting better because their previous average last year was 4. So that showing that there's an improvement in and around that breakdown turnover space for the All Blacks. Yep. So I know we're layering a lot of stats here, but it does paint a clear, well, if I was the coaches, it paints a clear picture to what the strengths are of both sides.
We saw last year in All Blacks team that while they chance their arm at times, they struggle to get consistent gain line and they turn a lot of ball over. When you then look at the makeup of the side, Bryn, and who you have in your loose forward combo, are we looking at 2 fetchers? Or are we looking at 2 bruisers? Or what works in this context?
I think for me, a big forward pack. And probably the first test match when we saw Tupou Vai at 6, I'd like to see Wallace Satiti at 8 and Ardie Savea at 7. Now, what that does probably in terms of our bench, we're able to have 2 loose forwards. So is that a Parker and a Du Plessis-Creefy, as an example, or you have Simapeni Finau? Not too sure, but I think having a big forward pack, the fact that Tupou Vai is a great option in the lineouts, it's 3 locks really that are in that defensive lineout, and the attacking side of it, which we know how good Etzebeth and Co are good around the lineout ball. So, and also the scrum as well. I think it's pretty important. We know that the South Africans are coming here with the big scrum, not just in terms of the first 40, but the bomb squad that comes on. Because I think in the last 4 test matches that the South Africans have played New Zealand, there's 7 scrum penalties to 1 to New Zealand. So, you know, it's a pretty telling stat in terms of what their set piece and what they value. So I think the bigger forward pack, they can be able to get the gain line percentage with the attacking ball, but I think also defensively, being able to, I guess, not bully, but try and match power for power with this bomb squad and their forward pack as well.
Yeah, and I think when you look at their gain line, a lot of the gain line percentage is off tough carries, but then also breaks on the edge. But I think the important stat, and to sort of show the growth of this All Black pack from last season to this season, their dominant carry stats. So they were at 27% last season average, and when they've won, 39% this season. 34% in the loss against RG, but 39%. And I think that shows that a Wallace Satiti coming back is very timely because he does dominate collisions. He lands on top of players, or at least through the collision out the other side to create the quick ball and potentially even just pick through the middle. You can keep going through the middle. So I think the bigger the bodies and then the ability to sort of disrupt at line-out time. We know the Springboks rely heavily on that line-out, so having the 3 tall options and the bench makeup's interesting. I think, you know, it's Samipeni Finau does have the ability to cover lock 6, and I just think the power athlete that is Du Plessis-Creefy just fits a Springbok test perfectly in the last 20.
They've got to be able to try and win collisions, and you know, Simon Parker, we saw that at the Chiefs.
Yeah,
he's really good at that.
You're trying to find someone who can replicate Patrick Tuipulotu, really, like, because he is such a formidable beast coming off the bench late in a game, and he always ends out the right side of any collision, whether it's defence or carry. So that, you know, like you say, if Parker's the one that has the better, I don't know the stats on each one personally, but if whoever's the best at doing that, that's what you need. You need that impetus through so that you can sort of close the game out.
Leicester Fainga'a-Nuku, he's come into the squad. How does he play into this? Is he an option? He is very familiar to the coaches. Is he in the 23? Is he just cover? How do we look at Leicester Fainga'a-Nuku considering Caleb Clark's not available? The back 3, or at least the people at the back in the pendulum, are struggling to get high balls. How does it all play out?
Just on there, the reason with the pendulum, so like, there's been a lot of talks around like the backfield and being able to not being able to win the air. So like, what with this day and age and happening now, it's your 10 and your 15 that are kind of at the back. So it's a Bowden Barrett and a Will Jordan that are kind of at the back. So they talk around wingers being able to try to win the ball aerially, but it's actually the 10 and the 15 at the moment that are in the backfield. So, if you are the All Blacks, you may be thinking, how can you be a bit different and how can we win the aerial battle? We can probably put, whoever that left winger is, you can put maybe, a Bowden Barrett on the edge, being able to put him a little bit closer in the line and get the likes of it could have been a Clark, but a Flying Anuku or someone that's in a winger that's been able to get up for the ball. Because when we're attacking, you want to try to use the wingers to be able to get up for the ball. So I'd like to think that hopefully the All Blacks have thought in and around a solution how they can be better in that space because, no disrespect, like Bodie's been there a long time, but we want him in other areas being able to use his game. We can get probably our wingers that can try, get up for the ball in that way.
Well, I think the best way to disrupt it is maybe not focusing so much on the players that have got to catch it. It's not letting them kick on their terms. So often, it worked previously when you could sort of just line up, let them set, and you could escort. Now you can't escort. You have to dominate the collision. You then have to be a niggle at the breakdown. You've got to be pulling bodies or pushing or making sure that there's some sort of disruption that makes them feel rushed. And then the accuracy of that kick doesn't allow for them to potentially have as high a percentage of regaining that ball as we've seen previously. And if you don't get that right, and it comes back to the bigger bodies, taking on Etzebeth and co, you need big men to put him backwards and then at least put the pressure on the nines and their ability to, I suppose, execute that box kick to precision.
We've had a fair few emails come through. We've touched on Lester Fainga'a-Nuku briefly, but Toby Gainley made a really good point in his email. We talked about Lester Fainga'a-Nuku playing the back end of games at Toulon at flanker. When you consider the options that provide, we talk a lot about 6-2 split, and we always talk about forwards that can play in the backs, not backs that can play in the forwards. How does that affect the ability whereby you could have a 5-3 split, but effectively it's a 6-2 split, Jim?
I think it's going to start to become the norm. You know how trends in rugby are funny? Even if we use the Shield game on Sunday, Samipeni Finau goes out into the midfield and Ollie Mathis, I know he's obviously one that can play forward, but he goes onto the scrum. And I can see why someone like Lester playing a blindside flanker role and having the ability with his skill set in different parts of the field than he's used to, whether it's centre or wing, can create opportunity. One, because all attacking structures are designed to do is to make defenders hesitate or think. And the moment that they hesitate is the moment the opportunity is created. That's what that does in the last 20 minutes. I haven't seen this, or I'm not used to this. So I think more and more, it's not going to just be about one person being able to cover. I do think there will be a element of, I suppose, wingers, getting more opportunity in there, like an Ollie Mathis, or Lester Fainga'a getting an opportunity in the blind side, becoming more of a, I suppose, the thing that like a Quagga Smith could do is he's an out-and-out forward that you could put in the back. Akira Ioane, you could out-and-out forward, put him back. It almost does feel like the trend's going the other way.
Well, even like Georgia, I know this is obviously the Black fans, but Georgia Miller's first try, she was pretty much set out into the backs and being able to be used as kind of like a roving winger or a centre. So I think as it does continue to be, I guess, players being able to play multiple positions, and depending on if you want to have 6-2 splits or 7-1 with the South Africans, how can you put your best players in a position where it's vulnerable and probably, to Jip's point, get them thinking around, he's not usually there or she's not usually there, and there might be a little bit of indecision where then you can be able to break through from that indecision.
Everyone has to clean rucks now. Everyone has to make tackles. Everyone has to be in and around a defensive structure and know how it all works, because if you find yourself there, you've got to do the job. Except lineouts. If midfielders start strapping up the old legs for lifting and stuff, it becomes a little bit more obvious.
Jordy Barrett actually did jump in some lineouts for the Hurricanes a couple of years ago, didn't he? So he's got a little bit of time there. We caught up with him before the Rugby Championship. We talked a bit about his upcoming battle with Damien Dialende from the Boks. Talked, of course, about Ireland and how that went from what it was like playing rugby over there and the way he adapted. And Geordie being Geordie, we talked about his number one obsession, golf. It's awesome to welcome back to the show, Geordie. We had you on last year. We talked a lot of golf. You're still doing a lot of golf. But you've got a YouTube channel now.
do, yeah. I've taken the plunge, which is exciting. So get a few videos out there for the viewers to hopefully enjoy.
So what's the idea? What's the plan behind it?
Just seeing where it might take me and hopefully get a few different rugby athletes and cross-code athletes and not even sports people. But yeah, in the cart and get chatting and just find out a little bit more about themselves and yeah, just enjoy the round.
Yeah.
What's the best part of your game?
Probably my putting at the moment. My putting can save me a little bit, but ebbs and flows. Golf is a game like that. You turn up one day and your driver's on, turn up the next and it's the opposite. So yeah, I don't really typically have a strong point. Just try not to be poor in any area.
You must have played a lot of golf in Ireland.
I did, yes. Fortunately, it was easier to get a 4-ball. Sometimes 2 groups. A lot of keen boys in that Leinster squad who grew up playing golf, and it was a big part of their preparation week too. So we had a lot of fun playing golf in and around Dublin, and even getting in the car and travelling to various parts of Ireland and days off and recovery days too. So I had a great time.
Who was handy?
Kieran Frawley, he's on a 2 or 3. Josh Van der Fleer, very good. He's on a 3 or 4. Hugo Keenan and Dan Sheehan are low single digits as well. So there's plenty of good golfers up there.
Sounds like a good crew.
So the competition went up, is what you're saying.
For sure, yeah. Like I didn't feel bad about playing golf 2 or 3 times a week because those guys are out there just as much as I was.
What about Ireland? You played with some incredible players.
Yes.
You played under Leo Cullen and Jacques Nienaber and Tyler Blandale and McBride from Wales. A lot of different schools and cultures of rugby all in one place. What were the kind of things that you learned about the game that you didn't know before?
I guess I learned just a lot through experiences, through different times in the week of preparing for different opposition, playing in different conditions with different players as well, and just different ways of thinking. Like you just alluded to, had a Welsh international forward coach, Leo Cullen, Irish, Jacques Nienaber, South African, and then Tyler, who I was lucky enough to be coached by at the Hurricanes for a number of years, who is an outstanding attack coach. So I couldn't have been in a better spot at that time in my career. Genuinely, I felt, and it was great for my game. I learned a lot of international Irish rugby players, and then there's a lot of great club players within their environment too that could easily take the next step. So I learned a lot in the 7 months by just playing different teams, European Cup, URC, going to South Africa again. So it was enjoyable.
Probably the highlight of the trip, well, for me anyway. I don't know if it's your highlight, but how did you see that try where you just basically kicked it on the toe? Can you just give us an experience? I know it's probably instinct, but did you see the backfield was clear, or was it just by chance that you hoofed it ahead?
It wasn't by instinct. A lot of teams, well, when we previewed playing the Bulls, we met them on the high velds earlier in the year, and with their kicking game, they love to kick long from their own half, and teams at the high veld, they continually kick long to them because you can with the altitude. And I noticed their backfield were just sitting so deep, like close to their 22 when we're exiting between halfway and the 22, and it's like there's no altitude in Ireland. So the first box kick went up, and as I was chasing on the open side as a midfielder, as you normally do, and the defensive structure is really pragmatic around the numbers they have on the short side and their tight forwards around the ruck. And their backfield was so deep, and the first one went up, and their backfield had to come way forward to catch this ball. And the next stoppage, I spoke to Luke McGrath. I said, look, the next time we get to that location off our exit, I'll just say, yes, Lukey, if the short tops is on. But if you don't hear anything, just go to the normal contestable kick. So then as I was creeping forward, I could see the tight forwards around the ruck were kind of just thinking it was going to be a contestable again, and their backfield was back in the car park on their 22. So I just said, yes, Lukey, and I got a bounce. So one of those things you might have, as Bryn will know, you have plans around that sort of stuff within games, but not often it actually comes off. So it was nice to come off in a big moment in the final.
Their structures are so intricate over there, the way they play strike plays over 5-6 phases. Was that quite a lot to take in and learn all those elements. You said elements are pragmatic, but other elements look like they're just straight up bookwork.
I mean, generally speaking, I feel like the Irish international team I've gathered and a lot of the Leinster boys are unbelievably studious. Like most of them are literally studying while they're still playing for Leinster in their country, and they take on information so well. And I think when you think of Leinster and you think of Ireland, you think of starter plays, like you say they'll set a team up 1 or 2 or 3 phases and then strike. That's when the trick play comes, and it seems like everything is timed to perfection. All the ducks are in the row. The right person's getting that right clean to pretty much set someone up for a line break. And I guess within their working week, they're massive on repetition, being so diligent in their prep. And I mean, a strike play that you might see on Saturday, that whether it comes off or it doesn't, they might have walked through it 20 or 30 times in the week, and that's not a stretch. So that's probably a big change compared to what would have been the norm at home.
And it looked like they embraced you, especially once you started getting some wins for the side. Did you really enjoy that?
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, people have asked what I'm going to miss most about coming back to New Zealand and leaving Dublin. It's just the people, just so positive and warm, and I felt so welcome there. The club was great. The people within Leinster were great, and my teammates were outstanding too. When you're so far away from family and friends, you're forced to get out of your comfort zone and make new friends and branch out a little bit. So that was awesome, and thankfully I've got some lifelong friends now that I'll be able to reconnect with at some stage, which is lovely.
Played a lot of rugby championship, but the idea of having the Boks here 2 weeks in a row, the ability to build on the previous performance, those things must be wonderful.
It's a great test, not only for young guys in terms of the way they want to try and prepare themselves, but also for the leaders who are trying to get the squad in a space where you can be consistent from week to week. So that'll be the challenge for the next block of rugby championship.
One of our favourite players on the show is Damien Dialende. Like, you've played up against him a number of times. But what do you love about the way he plays, or hate when he's coming at you, as the case may be?
Damien, I mean, he's unbelievable. When I think of him, I'd use the word balance. He's just such a well-balanced individual, ball carrier, tough, strong defender, just does everything right. Big engine. He doesn't miss any games. He's always fit and healthy, durable, and unbelievable player who I feel like, will get the best out of me too. He set the marker as a midfielder, as a 12 for a number of years. So it'll be an intriguing challenge if I'm given the opportunity to go up against Damien, who, I respect.
It's quite incredible to hear him, Jipper, talk about that try in Ireland and the way he thinks.
And just the answer, like, no, it wasn't planned. Like, it was just like, I just, saw it a couple of phases earlier, had the conversation, then executed. Like, that is the difference between good and great. Right there was the best example, and the way he articulated it was just simple and clear to understand. And then you've still got to have the skill set to deliver upon it, which he and Leinster did. But that was an awesome insight just to how great his rugby mind is.
And that's the stuff that the fans don't necessarily see. I mean, with all of the chat we have about the midfield at the moment, getting an understanding of just how smart these guys are in the roles that they play.
Well, and the reason why I think Leinster is so good is because from 1 to 15, we've talked about a lot with Ireland, they know what their job is. So it's when you've got people inside and outside you, and look, Geordie for that example saw the space for himself, but if you've got like someone telling you where the space is, or being able to get a downline, or hey look, the fullbacks come right up, that kick space is on. When you're hearing that information and it's really, really clear, then you're able to execute. So, Geordie Barrett, when he was over there, you could see how much decisiveness and how clear he looked, because I could only imagine that there was so much great communication for him to be able to only concentrate on his role, and then it's just his skill set, which he's got a great skill set. Run, pass, kick, he can do it all. So, yeah, it was a great insight in terms of that try, but I think where he was playing, you can see why he played so well when he was over there.
What he said about Damien Dialende, who also now has that full triple threat game.
And I just think it shows the respect the global players have of each other, and probably how much they do watch each other and pick up on each other's strengths and look to grow areas of their game, sort of off each other, which I really like, because you're never the finished product.
Yeah.
And that's what it showed to me, is he's just wanting to be better. The whole move to Ireland was him wanting to be better. The whole way he looked at Damien Delende's game, we're obviously big fans of it, but he's the one in the arena doing it and acknowledging it is massive.
If you, a family member or a friend, wants to get into rugby shape, we have the giveaway to suit. Along with All Blacks trainer Dr. Nick Gill's Rugby Ready team, we're trying to get the rugby community, whether you're a player or fan, fit and strong. Each week, one winner will receive 4 weeks of free access to the Rugby Ready Perform membership, with full access to all of Dr. Nick Gill's pre-season, in-season, off-season and specialty programs to help take your game to the next level. A huge congratulations to this week's winner of the Rugby Ready giveaway, Stacey Daniel. You've scored 4 weeks of free access to the Rugby Ready Perform membership. And thanks again to everyone who entered. We loved reading your stories. And if you didn't win this round, don't worry, you're still in the running. So keep those amazing submissions coming in, and it could be your name we announce next week. Thanks again to everyone who entered. We loved reading your stories. And if you didn't win this time around, don't worry, you're still in the running. So keep those amazing submissions coming, and it could be your name we announce next week. Want in? It's simple. Just DM Rugby Ready on Instagram with the code ARP and tell them why you'd love to win. And of course, if you miss out, you can get 75% off memberships through ARP by going to the link or using the QR code below. Now, big game from the Black Ferns. They looked far better against Japan, I think. Like, it was a far more solid outing, wasn't it, Brynner, against Japan? It was a good win, a solid win, 62-19, but there was something about the way that they were composed and the way that they attacked that was up a level.
Yeah, and look, I think it's just that first game in a World Cup first game, probably not playing for a long time, and that clunkiness, probably you're going to get that in that first game. And it was probably a little bit like that within the first 10 minutes, a few errors and a couple of penalties to be able to get Japan to score that first try. But look, I think I was really impressed with their kicking game. Now, it looked like on screen that there was a big win in that fixture, and we would love to be able to think against a Japanese side, we'll be able to want to try use the ball, being able to use our brute strength and being able to try physically dominate them, which we did at times. But I really enjoyed the kicking game from Demont. Got some really good pay and putting some backfield pressure on that Japanese side. And I think, like I said, I think that first try that I saw, Georgia Miller, they're getting their players in the right opportunities to be able to try and influence the game. Like I touched on it earlier around her being able to work with the backs and being able to be an option in that kind of 13-11 area defensively for the Japanese. So yeah, it was really impressive. Probably the success rate as well. Like Jip touched on it a lot in terms of what their percentage was. I think they had 15 entries for 10 tries. So that effectiveness and that ability to be able to be better in that space was really impressive in terms of those areas, which I saw on the weekend.
Yeah, I think they're building. Is probably the biggest point. It was definitely a step up in accuracy. I think they'll get better and better, but sometimes we get fixated on, they haven't played much footy, but it just shows obviously a few more training runs, because they did change a lot of personnel. So it was a relatively new team, but there was a lot, I suppose, higher accuracy in and around the catch pass area and finding the space. I think probably the most impressive for me was the 7 breakdown steals and defensively tackling it 95%. Now, why I say that is because obviously yellow cards, down numbers, on the goal line defence was really strong. And I suppose the growth that they need to see in that is the physicality in that 95%. Because England and the French and the Irish and the Canadians will be a little bit more direct than the Japanese side, and you're going to have to stop them cleanly. But positive signs in terms of that accuracy. To be able to be that accurate against a well-drilled Japanese side is strong. I agree with you. I think the 10 tries out of 15 entries is strong, but there was one penalty conceded for, obviously, turnovers through handling errors. Now, that 15 against England is probably going to go down to 3 or 4.
Yep.
And that's where that ruthlessness against Ireland and whenever they progress to, 66% is good. I'm not saying they have to go at 100%, but out of the 3 or 4 they get, they probably need 3.
Yep.
that 75% mark. So they're not far off, but I just think those are the growth areas of the game. And then line out is still 72%. They'd want to lift that accuracy against, and I keep referring to England because let's be honest, like they from the last World Cup, they seem to have lifted. Like that's hurt the program in terms of losing that final the way they did it, and the dominance they had shown with 26 consecutive wins. And there's just a bit of grit between their teeth, and you know that it's going to take, a pretty big effort to topple them.
The line-out drive is their specialty. Japan did pretty well in that area.
Good specials.
I think,
Yeah.
They had some good specials, and this is what happens, like, and we can't just assume England are going to go to a drive or France because they perceive they've got a strength there, because what normally happens is when it's a weakness, you're geared up for it, like you're down, you're ready, you speaking from experience, and you're like, they are not going to drive through us. But that creates opportunity with these little special plays that Japan put in. So I think the Black Ferns have just got to be mindful that they have the ability to just nail their role within the system, and what's thrown at them means they can adjust on the run. Yeah. So I actually think the Japanese did them a favour in terms of their growth and development in that maul space, because it just shows you can't assume. The moment you assume is the moment that someone will be able to manipulate you.
Yep. Ireland will have learnt the same lesson because they got caught with a few of those specials themselves, didn't they, against Spain? Like, I wasn't expecting to see what we saw in that game from Spain against Ireland.
Yeah, again, I think they showed moments. Sorry, I'm dominating.
No,
I think they showed moments against the Black Ferns. Again, I think they probably just knew they've got nothing to lose, in the Spanish. And there's also an expectation, because Ireland bet the Black Ferns, it's almost like building towards, and for them, that expectation maybe just making them tighten a little bit, maybe it just restricting their ability to play. I sound like I don't know what they're thinking, but it just looks like that. It just looked a little bit restricted. And that created opportunities for the Spanish to sort of feed off that and just chance their arm, and that they did.
Yeah, and I think for the Irish side, knowing that that's probably the big part of that pool game, the Black Ferns are so experienced, right, in terms of what's required of them on a week-to-week basis when going into a Rugby World Cup, World Cup. So, that tightness and being able to probably see what's on the horizon with the Black Ferns coming. But I think the best thing is that our draw has been really good for us. We've been able to have a couple of games to be able to fine-tune a few things and look at how probably hasn't been the opposition that we want, but you can't underestimate game time and being able to play 80 minutes, being able to play 50 minutes, 60 minutes, and being able to get those runs on the lead in a different environment, a different country, experience kind of what it is to be in England and being able where they are playing to do that. So I think our draw has been really good for us, and I think it's going to be good for us.
It's a hard 23 to pick. There was strong performances both of those pool games for the Black Ferns, and that's what you want, And I think you talk about the Irish and the other nations. The one benefit that I suppose the Black Ferns have is they've got players in their environment that have been fully professional for a long time. So the idea of pressure and being, I suppose, nervous or afraid of it just isn't there when you've got players like Portia and Woodman-Wycliffe, you've got Ruahei Demant, Tukuafu, you name plenty. They've Setefano, Flula, those 7 skills in particular have just been professional for so long. Their high standards and expectation is fed across that team, you can see. And then the players that have 15 specialists that won the World Cup, I don't know, there just seems to be a real professional, methodical approach that just looks a little bit different. Now, that may change on game day because they have to beat Ireland. They need to make a statement and make sure that they track in the direction they want. But I get that, to me, seems like a good point of difference, and it's definitely coming through.
Well, one of the other things that's really working for them is these young players like Miller and Sorensen McGee come in, and they just have fallen straight into the system, and they're able to be put into space and create things. But for New Zealand Rugby to continue to build such wonderful young talent, a bit of resource has to be put well and truly into the grassroots. And we caught up with Emily Davidson from New Zealand Rugby a little bit earlier to talk about what exactly is happening there and how Bunnings is assisting. Now, a big part of developing the women's game, taking advantage of all the success at the top and making sure that it spreads down to the bottom, is that there are the facilities in place to allow the game to grow. Now, Bunnings Rugby Assist is playing a big part in that. It's a concept where $300,000 is spread across a few clubs across the country, 10 to be exact. $30,000 per club, and it helps with building facilities, whether it's changing rooms or kitchens, whether it's security lighting, chances for children to play on playgrounds, making sure that there are also those changing room facilities for women that a lot of clubs don't have in their legacy. All of those kind of things that can help build the game, make sure it's accessible for people with disabilities, all of those kind of things. Massive positive change for rugby throughout our communities. To talk a little bit about this, we're joined now by Emily Davidson, the head of women's and girls rugby at NZR. That sounds like a great job to be involved in, first and foremost. Like, what a positive thing to do.
It's not lost on me. It's such an exceptional role. So I lead community rugby, and I have this wonderful team of exceptional women, and we've got now women's roles across the country in provincial unions, and we all work together to grow the community game.
Have you noticed a lot of change in women's rugby since you've been involved in it over the last little while?
Yeah, so I came into New Zealand rugby as we launched the Women and Girls strategy, and so I think one of the biggest shifts that this strategy or roadmap, if you like, has had on the game is this real sense of unity. So we're now seeing New Zealand rugby and 26 provincial unions work together in partnership. And this is through strategic alignment, targeted investment, intentional leadership to really accelerate the women's game. And I think what we're seeing as well is a real openness to change and to be innovative and really flexible in the women's game, and a lot more idea sharing and an openness to idea share as well. So I think that partnership has been a massive, massive shift since that strategy has been launched.
And the impact of winning $30,000 of Bunnings products, is that having a big impact on this in particular growing of the women's game?
We've got rugby clubs in New Zealand that are 100 years old. 1 in 4 have club rooms that are 70 years or older. So they're aging, and they're often not fit for purpose for today's landscape of rugby. So for context in that, we've had 121% uplift in women's participation in clubs in the last 10 years. And so we've got these clubs who are trying to work tirelessly to make sure that women and young people are included, are safe and welcomed in these clubs. But to upgrade facilities is expensive, and the Bunnings Rugby Assist program is obviously so critical in the women's game and the game for young people. And what we're seeing is clubs invest in things such as changing rooms, so ensuring that there are women's only changing rooms and showers and facilities. And I think you can't underestimate the sort of that safety, clean facilities have on making you feel really welcomed and valued at that club. We're seeing investment into child-friendly spaces, so whether that's to set up new spaces or enhance the spaces that are already there, and that's really welcoming more young people and more mothers to the game, which our clubs are reporting is a really, really awesome thing.
What are the other big wins that you've had across the community?
We're now at 35,000 participants, 30,000 women and girls playing rugby, which is the highest number we've ever had participating in the game. So that's a really exciting time. We're seeing more targeted initiatives, so more women's only coaching programs, more women's only referee programs to grow the number of those coaching and reffing the game. We're seeing more girls only grades. We're seeing more innovative initiatives and programs for girls to enter the game and learn to play safely, such as Contact Ready. And we're seeing globally a shift in how we provide rugby to people. So there's a new format called T1 that is just being launched in this country. And it looks like rugby, feels like rugby, but you don't tackle and you don't have contested scrums. And I think these newer offerings and this ability to be a little bit more flexible, a little bit different in rugby, will appeal to a significantly wider audience than what we currently are, and therefore have more people in clubs helping them become more sustainable into the future.
I might make a comeback. 2-1.
2-1.
There you go.
There you go. Obviously, a lot of positive aspects in the women's and girls game, but what are some of the challenges that you still face?
I think 2 that always come to mind to me is one is the number of women coaching and the number of women refereeing. So we only have 1,000 women in coaching roles, so they make up about 10% of total coaches. We have 100 women in referee roles, so only 6% of total number of people refereeing. So we really need to understand and better understand their experiences and why potentially we don't have more women in these roles, because representation absolutely matters. And then the retention of teenage girls. So we're not immune to that in rugby. I think one thing that's really interesting in rugby, though, is that we actually experience high volumes of new players. So new girls come into the game in rugby, which is unlike other sports, but retaining them is really difficult. And we know that teenage girls tell us they're motivated by fun, fitness and friends, but they're also telling us that there's a fear of physicality and injury. They're becoming more pressured, you know, they're busier with school, their other sport commitments, and also they're telling us sport's getting too competitive at this age. Like, they can't just play for fun, there's not enough options. And then when you match that with them telling us that they've got this sort of real perceived sense of judgment going on, their bodies are changing, and the research we see now, you know, like there's some global research saying 1 in 2 girls will quit sport because of their periods, and 1 in 4 New Zealanders, women, will miss work or school because they can't have access to period products. So we've got this range of barriers at play for our teenage girls, but we know they want to play rugby. So we have to be really deliberate, hear what they are saying genuinely, and really adapt to ensure that they can have both a competitive experience, make sure that they're entering the game safely, so great programs that teach them to learn the contact side of the game safely, and also alternative formats like T1, 7s, 10s, 15s. All of these formats play a really, really important part in the ecosystem.
It's complicated, but it sounds like there's a lot of good work going on in the background.
Yep. Absolutely.
Thank you very much for your time, Emily. We really, really appreciate it. And thank you very much to Bunnings Rugby Assist. $300,000 around the country to help our clubs be up to date and make sure they're serving the community properly. Now, when it comes to grassroots, or at least semi-professional rugby, the NPC is where it's at, and the Ranfurly Shield is where the #1 piece of excitement is. We spoke about it earlier, Bryn Oracle Hall picking Southland. But when you look at that game, Brynna, and the way they went about doing it, where did you think were the key elements that they really honed in and performed the way that you thought they would?
Look, I think the weather, like, it just kind of felt like when they won it 2009, 2011, they just were gritty, found a way, all the 1%ers, all the little areas that was really big in terms of when they were able to win the Ranfurly Shield back in those years. But I think the weather dictated it a lot. Like, I think, you know, the Waikato team had a lot of All Black boys coming back in, a pretty strong squad, but, you know, sometimes the weather is a great neutraliser. And I think in that first half, them being able to hold Waikato to a pretty low scoring and keeping it really tight, opened up that second half. And their kicking game was really good. I think, like Penna, he was outstanding in terms of being able to get a couple of 50-22, some really good kicks, even into the win in the first half, being able to kick it nice and low. And I think just their grit in defence in that last 20 minutes. So you could see they were tight, and their bench came on and were just tackling like demons. Like, I think Withy, Drippy, were telling us that in terms of, was it five turnovers?
5 turnovers. Wow.
5 turnovers, you know, in a game. And so, you know, all those kind of areas, they were just really good in their running. And probably Waikato as well, a lot of mistakes. But that was in terms of what Southland did to them and the amount of pressure they put on them.
I think it's the Southland defence needs a bit of credit, because they did the same against Bay of Plenty. They forced a lot of errors. And these are two good sides in Waikato and Bay of Plenty. And they're so accurate, and when they go into those defensive breakdowns, they don't waste a number. If it's not on, they just spread and they back their defence. And in that first half, man, like, the wind was just outrageous, and they held Waikato to 10 points, which was massive. And the fact that they went down there and scored a try as well was, you almost felt at that point, you're like, ooh, this is going to be tough for Waikato to come out in the second half and I suppose be able to win the game, because it just showed how ruthless that win was to play into. But I think I genuinely think the difference was their ability on defence and their ability at the defensive breakdown. And then just moments of brilliance, like we spoke about before. Like, you're only going to get a few opportunities in Ranfurly Shield rugby. Michael Manson did a chip over the top, a little short chip over the top. He regathered himself. It didn't lead to a try, but he was the one that called the kick space that led to Morgan's try. He was right on the inside, and he was communicating to Smith, put it over again, like, that kick space is there, because the 9 of Waikato was in the defensive line. Both wingers were back in the corner, like, it was on all day, and just perfect timing. Got the nice little bounce sideways for Morgan. The one thing I love about that try with Morgan, and I'm sure this has probably been said, but he was playing for the Swamp Foxes last year in Heartland when they won the championship. Went down to Southland for an opportunity, and Pathways, eh? What a beautiful thing.
Falatoi Penny, he's an Auckland player. He was Auckland Club Player of the Year.
They could use him right now, couldn't they?
Yeah.
Could use him right now. But but again, it has to come back to the Southland environment in terms of what they're producing down there. You know, the coaches, James Wilson, James Wilson's down there. Obviously, Scott Eade, who's had a big part of that Stag history. So, look, I think you've got to credit the coaching staff to bring these guys, first and foremost, to understand the skill set that they have, and then being able to let them flourish around what they do very, very well. Because those two guys have gone down there and played some really good rugby for Southland.
Absolutely, and they've been down there a number of years.
Yeah.
It's home for them. I don't think they'd consider other options because that was the team that gave them the opportunity. You mentioned Scott Eade. He's going to be a great coach, I reckon. Because I've interviewed him at halftime, even when they're behind, just smile on his face. We'll just stick to the process. Just almost.
First five,
he's just so. He knows the work's been done.
Yeah.
He can't control it. He's done. I don't know. He just seems like a really, really perfect personality for coaching.
Yeah, right. Just doesn't...
Loves his detail, does the work during the week, and then lets the players play.
Yeah, right.
He had a great interview on the radio. I think he actually probably had a few beers last night at the Oaks. Had a few after the game. So, yeah, it's good to see he's obviously, having a few beers as well.
Yeah, enjoying himself.
So you should.
He does life the right way.
Yeah, he does.
I feel.
Yeah, fair enough.
We all need a little bit of Scott Eade in us.
Yeah, will we want to be Scott Eade after playing Canterbury this weekend, defending the Shield?
Probably ask the Oracle.
Yeah, ask the Oracle.
Look, I just think, the way that they have played, they have a genuine chance because it hasn't just been the game that they had on the weekend. They beat Manawatu, they beat Bay of Plenty. So, look, they've played some really good games against some really quality opposition. They probably haven't had a lot of injuries, so you have to think, hopefully, the recovery-wise will probably be not a lot of training and being able to get themselves ready. But I know how much, and just hearing through that group, and I think more so in the 2009, 2011 when they did win it, how big it is for that city. It'll just kind of galvanise, and I think you'll see a really good effort from the Southland Stags. But against Canterbury, it's probably one team you don't want to have after Ranfurly Shield. But I think going down to Southland, they've definitely got a chance of beating Canterbury.
It's the two top defence teams in the competition, so it's going to be an arm wrestle. And I'm really excited to see the battle between Tupou Ta'iloa and Corey Callow.
Yeah, how good's
Corey Callow is playing the house down. If it's in the wide channels, if it's in the tight, that guy he is in phenomenal form. So that loose forward battle, I think the victor of that will probably decide who comes out on top.
No, we haven't talked at all about Australia versus Argentina. Not even a little bit.
Sorry, we've wanted this, South Africa and New Zealand, for the last, I don't know how long, Ross, so sorry to our Australian and Argentinian fans. We'll get back to you, though, we will.
Yeah.
But we're excited with what's happening, what's coming.
Yeah, right. So what do you see? You can be slightly longer than quickfire.
I think Australia have got a bit of mojo.
Yeah.
This is nothing on Argie, it's just they beat the British and Irish Lions and they struggle. They do go in peaks and troughs. When they have a big result, normally it's not a good follow-up performance. So I think that'd be the big thing for them, is to do that and to see the Wallabies as a big scalp. And I think because they beat South Africa, they'll believe they can do it. But I don't know. I like what the Wallabies are doing.
I do like the Wallabies, but obviously I think Will Skelton's not playing, and Tom Wright is a big injury for them as well. So depending on who comes in for those two. I think it'll be a lot to, those are two big players that have played really well in this early part of the June series and even now. So
massive, but if they're going to be serious contenders for 2027, they can't rely on two players.
Yeah.
And I think they showed enough, man. Tom Wright went out early, Nick White went out early, and they nearly beat South Africa in that second test. There's something, there's a lot more substance to them than as easy as saying, Will Skelton, Talaneo Tupou, Rob Valentini. I just think, they've across the board, their standards have lifted massively.
Last question. I know you're both going to say All Blacks. Why? Why the All Blacks for you?
Look, I think it's been able to take the opportunities when we have them, because I don't think there's going to be a lot. I think set piece is always a big part of it. The scrum sets that I touched on, Jason Ryan and co will be talking around being able to try and win that. But I think hypothetically, if it's somewhat dry, and our skill set's really good, I think with the way that the South Africans do defend, and you'd have to think that the preview that the All Blacks have done, they know that it's coming. They're going to try to go through it, or go around it in terms of a kicking game or being able to use the skill set of our passing game. So if that's going to happen, then I think we win it through our attack, and I think we'll be a lot better aerially, I think, when it comes to catching the ball from the South Africans, and hopefully, like Jip's touched on, we can win a few contested balls whether it's off 9 or it's off 10.
I think this game's going to be decided by discipline. I know we talked about it a lot last week, but it's going to be 1 or 2 points. And you just have to think, after the pain that they would have felt with Argentina, that discipline, where they've averaged in single-digit penalties before that game, I think that'll be the deciding factor.
Fired up. It's the big one. We've been waiting all year for this. 2 tests in a row against South Africa in New Zealand. The greatest rivalry coming up this weekend. Thank you very much for joining us on the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Thank you very much to Ashley and Martin for supporting the show. Thank you to all the crew who help us put this together. And thank you for watching and engaging with us. Send us an email at aotearoarugbypod@sky.co.nz, and also get into the comments section. We'll try to get to more of your emails in the week to come, but there's just been so much to talk about. We've been struggling to fit them in, but we've got an archive and we'll be pulling them out of the archive. So we'll get to yours as soon as we can. We'll catch you next week. Mā te wā.